When it comes to laying out your website, there are no rules, but there are some things that work and there are some things that definitely don't work. There's really just some common practices. So let's get into those things and have a look and see what we can do to make your website work really well for your booking system. So let's start with the two most important parts of your web page, okay? That's the header and the fold. Now, the header is that little rectangle at the top of the page. It's where you put your logo or a photo or some representation of what your website and your business is all about. It is important because people see it first every time. The other thing we need to look at is the fold. Now, the fold is that imaginary line that sits right at the bottom of the screen when you first open up the website. If you scroll down, you go below the fold, but when your website first loads, everything you see is above the fold, and that is the most important thing. Why? Because it's what the viewer sees first. So there are some really common and very specific things that need to be in that space. You need to put in there the introduction. We talked about that in the last video. The introduction is 1 to 2 paragraphs. It's got a few I's in there, but it's all about what you do. It is compressed down. It talks about who you are, why you do it, where you do it, and what you do, okay? All those 4 things compressed into 2 paragraphs at the maximum. That needs to be there. You also need your best video or your best photo, okay? I don't care which one it is, but you need to have your best one there. And when I say best one, the one that represents what you do the best, okay? Remember, it's not about you, it's about your audience. And it's about what you can do for your clientele's children or for the audience that you're going to be presenting to. That's what's important and that's what they want to see. The other thing you need is a call to action. We also discussed that in the last video. If you've missed the last video, pause this now, go and check it out because it is so important. It's a long video, but there's lots of worthwhile information in it. Now you need to get those 3 things in there, and it doesn't matter what the order is because there's only 3 things. You can do it in any which order and lay it out however you want, okay? For me, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. There's not a lot of space in that above the fold area anyway. Once you've got your header in, you just need to put those things in there. Anything else that you can fit in there comfortably, go for it, but don't stress about it. Okay, now I've got some bad news for you this time, okay? That space above the fold is where you're going to lose most of your viewers, okay? Google say that on average about 70% of viewers leave at that point. They don't scroll down and they don't click your call to action and go anywhere else. They just look at that part of your website, give it about 3 to 5 seconds, and then they're out of there. That's pretty harsh, isn't it? But the good news is that if you're going to get that bit right, you're going to get at least 30% of your viewers clicking further into your website or scrolling down to get more information. And they're the ones that you need to focus on at that point, okay? But first of all, we need to make sure everything looks really good. And I've got some great tips to make sure that works for you. Don't overcrowd your website, okay? What I mean by that is leave space, leave gap, leave air to breathe. Websites that jam lots of information into a small area are messy and hard to follow. You want to take something that looks like this and make it look like this. All those little gaps just give your brain that little chance to breathe and be prepared to soak up the next lot of information. Choose the right colors, okay? And this is something that really drives me insane sometimes with some websites, okay? You need to make sure that you only choose about 2 or 3 colors at the most and make sure that they complement each other, okay? And of course, be really wary of colors like light blue or yellow that are hard to see on a white background. Just keep right away from those. You want nice, interesting, bold colors, but they need to complement each other. You can use a color wheel to decide which ones work, or you can just use your common sense, but just be careful of what you do use, okay? There's nothing worse than lots of bright colors on a website. It just, again, makes it hard to understand. Your brain starts to sizzle as you look at it. Keep away from that. Keep it really consistent with your colors and keep them nice and meaningful. So for instance, if you have testimonials on your page, you can have them one color, but all your main copy is a different color, usually black. I recommend black for main copy. It's just easy to read and easy to understand. And then maybe for your headlines, you'll want a nice blue or an orange or something like that. But just make sure that it works, they all work together, and that it looks good. Doesn't look like someone's just like got paint tins and thrown them everywhere, all right? Don't use more than 2 fonts, okay? And make sure that those fonts are easy ones to read. You don't want to see any of that cursive stuff. You don't want anything that makes it harder to understand, okay? Make sure that it's easy to read so that your viewer doesn't use that option that they always have, and that is to hit the back button and go and look at a different website. You don't want to lose them because it's hard to read what you've got, okay? And in that, also remember to make sure that you keep your fonts all the same size all the way through. Sure, you can do larger ones for your headings and your subheadings, but make sure that whatever that format is you use it all the way through your website. So if you're using a H1 as your main heading, make sure you use a H1 all the way through. Every page that has a major heading has a H1. If you're using H4 for your subheadings, then use that. If it's bold, make it bold, but make it bold all the way. If it's blue, make it blue, but make it blue all the way through. Don't go messing it up. Once people start getting into the structure of your website, they'll find that flow and they will read it a lot easier, okay? And if you start changing things around on them, it makes it a lot harder for them. They're like, oh, hang on, what's going on here? It's a different page. They don't get it. So make sure that you keep it all structured and formatted the same way right throughout your website. Now, images need to be visible no matter where you are on your website. So as you're scrolling through your website, you need to always be able to see at least one image, and try and make those images as much as possible relatable to what you're talking about in your copy in the same area. It just helps and makes it flow a lot better. All right, now we've talked about all that stuff that we need in there. Let's talk about how we lay it out. This is where it really gets weird and confusing, okay guys? There's lots of theories out there. There are ideas and there's all this weird and wonderful stuff. There's things called the Z layout and the F layout. Now the F layout is the most common one. So I'm gonna explain that now and we're gonna talk a little bit about it. Okay, so apparently most readers or viewers of a website look at the website and they look through it as though they're reading the letter F, okay? Now, what's really interesting about this is that basically what they're saying is when you look at it, you look from the left to the right, then down, and then to the left, to the right again. As far as I'm concerned, that's exactly how we read in the Western cultures of our world, okay? We read from left to right, and if we're looking for a particular paragraph, we usually scan down the left side, looking at the start of the paragraph to find those words that we are remembering, and then we read it from the left to the right again. So there's this really interesting question that I've seen many times on this topic, and that is, which came first, the F layout or the fact that people read in the shape of the F? And to be honest, I believe that it's probably a little bit of a mixture of both, because most websites are designed that way, so people just automatically focus that way. Now, one of the ways you can find out about this is by using what we call heat maps, okay? Now, what a heat map does is it tracks the viewer's eyes through your website, and over a period of time, it sort of burns this image in on a screen so that you can see where people are looking. Now, I tried one of these out on one of my websites once a few years back, and I discovered one thing, and that was that most people don't scroll below the fold. It was something I already knew. As far as the F came out of it, I didn't see it. It just seemed to fill up the whole top of above the fold page, and then everything underneath was a bit sort of dots here and dots there and things like that. To be honest, I thought it was a complete waste of time, and I think it proved to me that depending on how you lay out your website is how people are going to look at it. Okay, so if there are no rules and there's no layout, then why are we talking about it? Well, because it does make some sort of a difference. And of course there are different ways to do it, and it's well worth playing with it and just experimenting with your website over time to see what does work best. But I can tell you this, and I guarantee you this, if you get that space above the fold with your header, a good strong header that definitely represents what your business is about, and then the rest of that above the fold space has those things, the introduction, the best photo or the best video, and a call to action. If you have those in there, you are well on your way to having a perfect website that is going to start generating more income through your booking system. So once you get that space right, the rest of your website is really simple, okay? Make sure that you fill it with informative content. Remember that it needs to be informative. It needs to be about what you're about, okay? Also, put lots of nice images in there, and of course those call to actions, okay? Just space it so that it's easy on the eye and it all flows nicely and is easy to read and understand. Also, make sure that any copy you put into your website is relevant to its page. In other words, if you have a page that is, say, the frequently asked questions, then you put frequently asked questions copy on that page and nothing else. Okay, you don't start talking about your shows on it. If you have a page for your shows, about your shows, then put all the information about your shows on that page. Don't put it anywhere else. It just makes sense, and it makes it easier for the viewer to find what they want to find and flow through it perfectly. Now, there is one exception to that rule, and that is for testimonials, okay? You can put testimonials dotted around your site, and you can also have a whole page for it. Testimonials are really important, and the more you get and the more you place them in your site, you're going to find how they work and how they influence people to want to book you, okay? Nothing shorter than that. So be sure to put them around as well as have that page. Well, that's it, folks. I hope it helps. Now, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below and I will answer. If you haven't subscribed, then subscribe, and if you like this video, then hit the like button. Now, remember, get typing, stay true to your passion, and build those sites. I'll catch you soon.